Hey folks, this is Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook, and I want to welcome you to the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit, where we've got educators from all over that are doing amazing things in technology, pedagogy, inquiry, and more. And I am so excited about this interview because we have three really awesome, really amazing educators that are doing some really cool stuff with Skype. And I really feel like this is one of those under-leveraged, underutilized resources that we have in the classroom that can offer these amazing experiences to kids. And it's something that I think just about anybody can do. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves to you. So we're going to start off with Ms. Dyane. Do you want to take it away first?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dyane Smokorowski. I am a Skype Master Teacher out of Andover, Kansas, and also the 2013 Kansas Teacher of the Year. And for me, being able to connect with other schools around the globe is my #1 passion. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Very good. Gina, you're next.
Hi, I'm Gina Ruffcorn, and I teach 5th grade at West Harrison Community Schools in Mondayman, Iowa. And I'm a Skype Master Teacher and an MIE expert. And this year, a Go Noodle ambassador, too. So I'm awful excited about all the different ways that my kids can connect with other places and other folks.
Yes, very good. And Jed.
And my name is Jed Dearybury. I am the Director of Professional Development and Communications for the Palmetto State Teachers Association here in South Carolina. I'm also a Skype Master Teacher and MIE. Some other fun things have happened in my education career. You can go read about those somewhere, I'm sure. But I'm excited to be here tonight, and we're such the unique name club: Smokorowski, Ruffcorn, and Dearybury. I mean, that is just awesomeness here. And then, of course, we have the awesome Matt Miller.
Yeah, we've got Miller, which is just as common as like Smith and Brown and all of that. So
okay. We still love you, Matt. We still love you.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And I got to tell you for those of you that are watching, whenever I get around these three people or I get to hear them talk or read what they're doing, I am always impressed with the kinds of cool experiences that they're creating and empowering for their kids. And it's all stuff that mostly just about any teacher can do, which is really cool. And so we're going to dive right into this. I know we're going to have some really practical, useful stuff for you today. So I want to start off with the first question for Jed. And so I know that just the abilities that we have now to go global, it's really easy, and the reach in every class is so huge. But it's also really important that we do that, I think. And I wanted to ask you, why do you think it's more important than ever now to have a global classroom, to be able to make those global connections for your students?
Well, you know, diversity and the respect of diversity is so important, and it's never been more important than it is right now. For me personally, I mentioned in my intro that I'm from South Carolina. I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, a small farming town. I did not meet my first person of color till I was in the 1st grade. I did not meet a person who believed of a different faith than I did until I was 16. I did not meet a person with a different sexuality until I was in college. And so diversity is just it's something that I needed more of in my life. And so I could learn to respect people who were different than me and learn from them, learn from their experiences. And Skype has been a way for me to have the world come right here to my little town in Spartanburg. I know you're going to hear Gina probably talk about her town, which is even smaller than where I live. And Skype has just, I said this last week, it tears down walls of hate while it opens doors of love. And I think that's kind of the motto that I've taken. A quick story, if I may. I had a chance to Skype with a classroom in inner city New York while I was teaching a class of 5th graders in a tiny town in southern South Carolina. And this particular day, of course, in southern South Carolina, all the kids were wearing camouflage clothing. And the students in New York wanted to know if it was camo day at our school. And the kids were like, "What's camo day?" And the people from New York said, "Well, oh, it's when you wear camouflage to school." And they were like, "Well, it's camo day every day here." And then we got into this long discussion about going hunting and shooting deer. And, you know, the people in New York City had no clue what that was about. And the people in South Carolina couldn't even fathom that they didn't know. But it was just a unique moment where diversity, it didn't have anything to do with race or sexuality or religion. It was the clothes that you wear and what you do to deers, you know.
It was about camo. Yeah.
It was really a unique moment. I will never forget it. It's where Skype really just brought the world together, made it very small. It was cool.
And isn't that sort of the fascinating thing about all of this, is that you never know where these conversations are going to go. Whenever you get these two unique groups together, it's like you don't know if you're going to talk about camo, if you're going to talk about what you eat for breakfast, or, you know, any of that stuff. You never know where it's going to go.
It was fantastic. The point of that call that day was a mystery Skype. They already knew where we were, and so the dialogue just continued afterwards for about 20 minutes, and we had a great discussion about the culture of the South versus the culture of New York City. And so it was a very eye-opening experience for both sides.
Yeah, boy, putting them on two different sides of the spectrum there, that had to have been eye-opening for both groups. So I love that. That's a great story. So I know whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, it's always interesting to see where everybody's kind of come from and what their early experiences were, because I know people that are watching this, there will be some that have never done anything with Skype before. If you're watching and that's you, then that is totally normal, and you are like lots and lots of other people. And so it's kind of interesting to see how certain teachers got into it and what their early experiences were and their feelings and their emotions around it and everything. And Gina, I love your story about getting into Skype, because it wasn't like a perfect and smooth process for you, was it?
No, it was the most harrowing experience I've ever had in a classroom in my life.
Harrowing is not, because we wouldn't think harrowing is a good thing.
I have no problem owning the fact that my first Skype experience using Skype was a humongous epic fail for me. I will say I was a late in life learner and went back to school when my daughter was in kindergarten. So I was in my mid-30s when I went back to college, and I had my degree, and I was playing around on another teacher website once and tripped across somebody who wanted to mystery Skype, and they kind of explained it to me, and I thought, well, this sounds interesting. Let's give this a shot. We'll just see what happens. I've always been pretty okay with risk taking and things like that. I'll try anything about once. And so we set up the call, and I had never used Skype in my life, and I don't have any formal technology training. When I went through college, PowerPoints were the big thing. So I kind of jumped in with both feet and thought, well, how hard can this be? It's just a geography guessing game. It's 20 questions. This shouldn't be that tough. And we failed. We epically failed. It was honest, and I can laugh about it now, but at the time, it was the most awful thing I had ever seen happen in my classroom. All of a sudden, I discovered that my kids had no critical thinking skills, and they were starting to ask all sorts of irrational questions, and they were getting really frustrated, and they didn't have a lot of grit and didn't have a lot of a growth mindset about them, and they were very defeatist, and I couldn't explain. I remember getting off that call that day and thinking, this is a skill set my kids are missing, and I'm not sure how to teach critical thinking. And I remember going back through my brain thinking, have I ever been taught this any place in a teacher program? What skills in critical thinking would be taught in a textbook, would be taught using a worksheet? And the answer there is obviously none. But yeah, we got off the call that day, and I looked at my kids, and I'm like, I'm not sure what we want to do with this. And my kids were so excited by this process. And I remember thinking to myself, I felt never more uncomfortable in my life as a teacher than I did during that call. But my kids were so excited by the ability to reach out to another area and to another classroom and to take that risk and continue to try again. I remember having a discussion with them, and we did a secret squirrel vote with blank pieces of paper where they just wrote yes or no. We either want to do this again or we want to never try this again. And it was overwhelming yes. And so I really had to take kind of a back seat to my kids at that point, and we worked a lot together collaboratively as a giant team, myself included, trying to understand how to ask good questions and how to work together as a team to problem solve and to critically think. And it was a really humbling experience for me as a teacher, because I didn't have any background to draw on for how to teach them to do this. And so it became very, very student directed. And we went on that year to do probably, I think we did 103 or 104 mystery Skypes that year.
Wow.
And they continue to improve and they continue to get better. And looking back on it now, I think the experience and the learning that I would have not allowed my kids to have if I hadn't put myself out there and let them drive the instruction and all of us take that risk together, would have been a horrible, terrible loss for them and for me as well.
Yeah, yeah. I two things that I absolutely love about that story. You know, one is the fact that we as teachers, whenever we get to show kids that we're learners too, that's so empowering to kids, I think, because you know, it's like sometimes it's so easy for teachers to give off the appearance that we have all the answers. And a lot of times that's the appearance we want to give off, or at least we feel like we should give off. And the second one that I really love about this is that idea of control, that we always feel like we've got to have everything in control, and that if something blows up, that we have a plan B and a plan C in place, but we better not get to plan B and plan C because plan A had better work just right. And you were a learner that day, just like the kids were, and in the subsequent days, but you were also allowed yourself to be out of control, so to speak. And I think that's awesome. And I think that's probably why it went over so well with your kids.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Very good. So I know a lot of times whenever I talk to people about Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever, and I'll tell them about the kind of cool things that you can do with it, there's always this one question that always seems to come to the forefront, and that is, where do you find these people? You know, I'll tell them about a mystery Skype, or I'll tell them about something cool my class has done. They'll go, yeah, but how did you find these people? In fact, I was just on a call the other day and they're like, so is this lady that we were talking to, is she some random person off the internet? I was like, no, she wasn't a random person. It's not like, you know, you spin a wheel and you come up with somebody. And so, Jed, I wanted to throw this over to you and say, just to see, what is your go-to resource for trying to find people and classes and other stuff like that that you can connect with Skype? Well,
I have several answers here. I mean, you said my go-to. My go-to is Dyane and Gina. I'm telling you, these two are great resources.
Those are good choices, yeah.
I cannot have a conversation about resources without talking about these two. But the biggest resource, really, the hub of finding all these unique experiences, is the Microsoft Educator community. Their website is education.microsoft.com. You can also type in skypeintheclassroom.com, and that will get you to a website where Skype has brought together resources literally around the world in 4 different categories. There's Skype lessons, there's Skype virtual field trips, there's mystery Skype opportunities, and there's also guest speakers. So there's 4 different categories that you can search for Skype experiences all around the world. Here you see it right there. If you click over on the left-hand side, I think that where it says Skype in the Classroom, it's the 5th tab down, the blue one. And you can just scroll down and you'll see the 4 ways that I just mentioned. If you click on Mystery Skype or Virtual Field Trip, any of the blue titles there, it will open up and you can learn more about them. You can filter based on subject, you can filter based on age, you can filter based on time zone. If you want to find someone in your time zone, you can also filter on language, which is very important. Let's say you're a Spanish teacher, Matt Miller, and you want your kids to practice speaking authentic Spanish with some people from Spain or Argentina or Mexico. You can find an experience for them to do so. Let's say you want to take your kids to the Lisbon Zoo on a virtual field trip. That's an option right now. That's a fabulous field trip. There's another one on there where you can visit a sea turtle hospital. It's an amazing experience. I took a class there a couple of months ago, and It was so amazing. They took us literally into an operating room where we saw a sea turtle having surgery to determine its gender. And apparently the turtle they were calling Bob was really Bobette. So it was a neat experience for our kids to be able to be a part of that. It was so cool. And it was amazing because we didn't just see the operating room. We saw the rehabilitation rooms. We saw pool after pool where they keep different kinds of sea turtles. And it was really intriguing to the kids here in South Carolina because our state reptile is the loggerhead sea turtle. And we do a lot of conservation efforts along our coast. So it was neat to see what they're doing in Key West to protect sea turtles. And there was even a rehabilitation pool out in the ocean where they let the turtles adapt back into the wild in a safe space before they let them just swim off, with Crush from Finding Nemo.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would totally echo that. I always tell people whenever I'm talking about the Skype in the Classroom website that it's almost like a database. Yeah. More than, sometimes you tell people it's a website and they think, oh, it's this, static site where you can go get information and stuff. And no, this is the place where you go to find all of the people and all the classes and all the guest speakers and everything, right? It's
very much a hub of all things Skype. Everything that we do is found there on that page. But there's not everything. There's other options out there. Twitter is a fantastic resource that I use all the time. Use the hashtag SkypeMT. That's the Skype Master Teachers. Another hashtag Skype2Learn. Skype to Learn. And you know what? If you tag at Skype Classroom in your questions or comments that you want to know about, their social media manager is fantastic, and we'll get back to you with some ideas. But those are two great resources: Skype in the Classroom through the Microsoft Educator community, and Twitter. Fantastic.
Yeah, and the Skype Classroom Twitter account has I think they're closing in on 100,000 Twitter followers. And so if you put something out there and if they happen to retweet it, I mean, that gives you an enormous audience. So if you put something out on Twitter that says, hey, I'd like to do a mystery Skype call, or I'd like to do find a guest speaker about thus and such. And if they retweet you, I mean, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get connected with somebody, I'd say.
Yep. You absolutely will.
Yeah. Okay. So the Microsoft Educator community, the Skype in the Classroom.com, all of that is kind of like the go-to source, according to Jed, and probably to all of us in this call, I would imagine. And, but sometimes, I've even had teachers come to me and say, I searched through that site and I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. Do you have any other suggestions? And I know that there's, a ton of other options for finding these great experiences. And Dyane, you've got some suggestions for us on that, don't you?
Yeah. First of all, there are more than one place for these kinds of distance learning calls. One thing about Skype in the Classroom that exists is if you find something here, you can never be charged for the call. And I don't know about you, Matt Miller, but free is in my price range.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Preach it. Preach that free.
So I totally support the Skype in the Classroom experiences first, but there are a couple of others out there. Field Trip Zoom is one that's starting to gain some traction. And those generally do cost, but there was an opportunity for our 8th grade students. They were looking at things around the American Revolution and found an organization in Canada who actually dressed the part of Benedict Arnold and allowed our students to have a conversation with Benedict himself. Now, that's not something that I can duplicate pretty easily, but in that situation, we used some book fair money to make that happen. And because he was set in Canada, he wasn't just always following the American, history stories that we're familiar with. We now had a different perspective, which is a powerful, powerful experience. So I wouldn't shy away from all those. Sometimes you might find that diamond in the rough that you can use. The other thing that I use quite often is NASA's Digital Learning Network. Are you familiar with that one at all, Matt?
Okay. I think I may have heard of it. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
I'm going to do a screen share. It's easier to show you. All right. And hopefully you guys can see my screen now. Yes? Okay. The website is DLN for the Digital Learning Network.nasa.gov. And your students can have Skype calls with NASA educators for free. And it's not technically Skype. They use another tool called Video, VIDYO. I want to say that's right. But basically, they send you a link and you're in. It's very, very simple experience to do. When you come to their website, you're going to click on Register for our interactive lessons. And there are several modules to pick from. Lesson descriptions sit on the left. They keep moving things around, so I have to look closely when I come in. And basically, they have about 10 or 12 different options that your students can participate in. They have things for littles all the way up to adults to choose from. And occasionally, they'll run special events where you can talk to a NASA astronaut, which is kind of amazing as well. The way you set up this one, however, is you will actually send them an email. The information is here. You just copy your school information and tell them which particular activity you want to do. You will need to look at their Google calendars to see what is available in your time zone and so forth. It's pretty simple. You just come over here to like Johnson Space Center, which is the one that's down in Houston. Come down and look at their calendar. You can see it's a little busy here at the moment. But Jed, I think your teachers need to talk to somebody in NASA. What do you think?
I think they absolutely need to talk to somebody in NASA.
Okay,
I think I should have been taking notes.
doing this.
Right? Yeah.
I'm going to have to sign up for the Ditch University so I can do better at taking all my notes.
You'll notice that they do have this.
Screenshotting.
They have the studios closed on the 16th, but they only have a 12 o'clock reservation on from 12 to 4 on the 7th, which means you might be able to get an early opportunity to connect with them. So you kind of look and compare your calendar with them. If Johnson's not an option, we just jump over to Kennedy, see what's happening in their world. Eventually it'll pop up in here. They have it set up just a little bit differently, so we'll just click on month. And looks like they're a little busy for a while, but you just kind of jump around until you can find one that's available. But I am a super fan of this one. I have to say I'm a little partial to Johnson. The guy down there, Michael, is an amazing human when it comes to working with students. So I'm going to promote Johnson a little bit more with a second run with Glenn Research Center right behind it. Both of them are outstanding. So that's one. The other way that I find people is just going into Google itself. You all know how to Google, don't you?
Yeah,
I've heard of these Googles that you speak of.
Okay. But we think about with guest speakers, you might have students doing a Genius Hour project, or they might be working on some sort of research in the classroom. Well, don't forget, research in books is great, research on web is great, but research with humans is even greater, because now you can ask questions with people who are experts. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll type in a career, like entomologist. And if I do a regular Google search, of course, I'm going to get information about entomologist, but I need to find a human to talk to. So I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see this a little better. Oh, come on, Mrs. Smoke. There we go. There we go. And you'll notice here that I'm using the site :twitter.com. That tells,
I love this trick.
Yeah, that tells Google you're not looking anywhere except in Twitter. Now, friends, that's the history of Twitter in the search here, results. So I need to be able to find someone I can talk to today. I'm going to come over here to search tools on the right, because Google is set all with filters. What's it set with, friends?
Filters.
You need to use those filters that Google gives us. And I'm going to narrow it down to somebody who's been in there this past week. Who's tweeting these days? Well, let's take a look here. Oh, there's someone named Insects Stacy. That looks promising to me. I don't know about you, but that looks a little promising. And I'm going to take a look at some of her posts. Little aquaponics going on in here. She's working in a greenhouse. She's working in Niagara, but here's where the bonus thing comes in, friends. We have a website. And we can look a little bit closer into the vetting process at this point. What can we do to maybe decide, is this somebody who would have good contact information for me? Well, guess what, friends? Every website has a contact us page. Now I have an email. I can send them a message and say, hey, would you be willing to Skype with us? And I will tell you that almost 95% of that time is a win-win, where they'll get in, they'll say, yes, we'd love to connect with you and make that happen. So those two little tricks maybe give you more options.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah. So if you go to a Google search, you type in the type of person you're looking for, and you do site:/twitter.com, and you can even filter it down to somebody that's been on in the last week or the last 24 hours or whatever. I love that, because that really does give you the power to find just about any kind of person that you need. And it's beyond just what's posted on the Skype in the Classroom website. So if you had to try to find something outside of that, I love that as an option. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Well, and don't forget that I didn't have to log into my Twitter account to make that connection. So even if teachers following don't have Twitter, don't worry. You just use that as like a virtual Yellow Pages. And the same thing would work at site LinkedIn.com as well. You're just looking for bios to be able to find a connection.
Right.
Yes. Beautiful. Genius. I love it. I love it. Okay. So we've got some places where we can find people to get connected with, to find other classes, guest speakers, virtual field trips, any of that stuff. We've got some good resources for that. So now if we find some people, what do we do? What are some things that we can do? And there are lots of really common things that classes do that are great. And one of them, probably one of the best introductory activities maybe, is to do a mystery Skype. And so we're going to throw this over to Gina, somebody who has done hundreds of mystery Skypes in her own classroom. So Gina, can you tell us a little bit about this and what your students get out of it?
Mystery Skype, to me, is one of the easiest things, and people will call it the gateway to other Skype experiences, and perhaps it is. Mystery Skype is where you would contact another class, either using the Microsoft Educator community under the Mystery Skype tab, where there are a ton of great resources, all for free, to help you set up a Mystery Skype in your classroom, or you can use the Twitter hashtag Mystery Skype and set up a time with another class, another age group that's similar to your kids. And really, it's just a 20 questions back and forth, asking about the other class and trying to locate somebody. To me, here's my take on it. When you begin to do this, we always start by doing rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. And you know, that rock, paper, scissors thing is really just kind of a commonality that all people share. It's a culturally common thing. We did a mystery Skype with Queensland, Australia last Friday, and we said, do you want to rock, paper, scissors to start? And instantly you form that common bond with the other side. Everybody knows how to rock, paper, scissors, and it starts everybody giggling a little bit and gets the wiggles out of the kids and the giggles out of the kids before you get started. But then once you settle in and you have your kids introduce themselves and you're asking questions back and forth, I don't think that there's a better way to teach problem solving, team building, and critical thinking than an actual mystery Skype. That ability for the kids to be able to ask a question and begin to narrow down your options teaches them so many valuable skills about process of elimination, critical thinking, and how to formulate some of those questions that help them think on a deeper basis than just something as simple as does it snow a lot in the area where you live? I think mystery Skype, once you start to talk about how to get better questions and you start to talk about team building and things, mystery Skype can spin off into so many other valuable life skills that you can't teach with any other classroom activity that I have ever come across in my teaching experience. So to me, that's why it's so important. And I've had people say, okay, you've done a bunch of these this year. How can your kids still be learning anything? What is there still left to learn after you've done a few of these mystery Skypes? And here's what I will say. My kids learn how to set goals for themselves. They learn how to work together as a team. They learn how to speak and listen in order to meet speaking and listening standards. They learn how to evaluate themselves on a personal basis, how to evaluate themselves on a group basis. We'll set problematic areas that we need to discuss. We'll set goals for ourselves, and then we'll come back after the session and debrief and talk about what went well and what didn't go well. My kids will set personal goals for themselves for things they want to be able to accomplish better during the activity. And then culturally, the best part is that share out at the end, where once you've figured out where the other class is and they've figured out where you are, and everybody kind of sits down and convenes around the computer, and the kids start to talk about their area and they start to listen to information about the other students' areas, those commonalities that we all share become really, really pronounced. And then the differences that we come across become celebrated, and then they become discussed, and then they turn into more wonderings and more explorations of other people's areas. And I think the skills that Mystery Skype calls out in children and allows them to build upon are so unique and so valuable that I don't know that anybody should not be Mystery Skyping in their classrooms frequently.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And having taught the high school level, I think sometimes people think of Mystery Skype as an elementary level younger kids thing, but my high school kids got so excited about it. I mean, I always tell the story of how I'll walk down the hallway and most of them are standing at their lockers and don't pay me a bit of attention as I walk by. But on the days that we were going to do Mystery Skype, they were almost like little excited second graders, like tugging at my sleeve, like, Mr. Miller, are we going to do that Mystery Skype thing, Mr. Miller? And I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, cool. And then they turn around and it was over. So, yeah, I can totally sympathize with that. And so as far as Mystery Skype, that's kind of like the lead-in activity to doing other things, but Mystery Skype isn't it whenever you get one class together with another class. And so I wanted to toss this over to Dyane real quick, because there are some really cool other types of activities that classes can do amongst themselves to use tools like this, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's probably my biggest passion of all, is having students connect to talk about different perspectives. Or we put a challenge out for them. A challenge that's happening in December, or just this recent time, was the gingerbread STEM project. And if it's all right, I'm going to do a screen share again because it's cooler if you see the pictures, if that's okay. And in this one, this actually was started by Micah Brown. She's one of the other Skype Master Teachers and probably the coolest person that I know, next to Jed, Gina, and Matt. And we have, in this one, it was started with a community project. Littles do communities over and over and over again, kindergarten, first and second. So we told them, instead of doing the gingerbread activity at Christmas, it's cute, right? How can we build something that would be a little more powerful? So we asked the students to investigate what they found were the most critical goods and services in a community. Then we asked them to create that out of gingerbread, which was graham crackers and cereal boxes. They created their communities. Then they would Skype with another classroom to give a Google Street View tour, personalized, of, well, we have a Dairy Queen, we have a Target, here's a great Target. And they said, we have a Target, that's great. We have these conversations. My favorite of this whole experience was last year. We had a kindergarten class connect with Beth Heidemann in Maine, who's absolutely amazing, another one of the Skype Master Teachers. And she had her table had a lot of blue paper on it. And then they had the goldfish that you would see in the crackers. And the kindergartner's like, why do you have goldfish on your table? They said, well, that blue section's the ocean. A lot of our daddies work on boats out in the ocean. Well, our little guys in Kansas, it's 12 hours to drive to an ocean from here. And they were shocked. They're like, whoa, your dad works on a boat? That's so cool. It was a big deal. So there's projects like that one. My favorite, though, is the Awesome Squiggles. Jed, this is yours too, yes?
Yes, this is my favorite. I love this.
Why do you love the Awesome Squiggles?
Well, because I like to doodle, really. I mean, that's really the heart of it. But no, I just love the creativity that goes into this. And there's no right or wrong answer with the Awesome Squiggles. It's whatever your mind can conceive. and then, you know, it's talking about it. It's sharing about what you created. And there's something empowering about sharing what you created because you own it. And nobody can take that away from you. And so I just love these squiggles. I love the artwork. I love the kindergarten artwork all the way up to the college level artwork. It's just amazing what is produced out of this experience.
And it's so simple to do. It's a simple concept. And I believe if you can make it brilliantly simple and provide opportunities for students to create something, but then when you create that Skype experience to talk about the work, well, now we have another level of learning coming in and perspective. Yep. And in this particular project, students are asked, or the teachers are asked, to download these 4 lines we have in PDF or PNG if they decide to use it digitally, and finish the artwork. What do you see? Maybe you see an animal. Maybe you see a face. A lot of people see faces when they turn this whole section about 90 degrees to the right. Here becomes the eye, a nose, and then they start connecting a chin and put a hat on the man. Can you kind of see that a little bit, maybe? Well, and I need to update the gallery from this year. I haven't had a chance to do that. But a year ago, we ran the project with these lines and ended up with students turning in artwork that looks similar to this. Yeah. And now you have a wow factor, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And the students can use any art medium that they wish. This is a little younger student putting this one together. With the elephant, we set a lot of elephants that year. And here we have someone using watercolor. It really just didn't matter what art medium they chose. It was just, what do you see? And because they come from all over the world, you end up with pictures from China that look like this. This is still my favorite one. The cat dreaming of fish.
Very cool.
I absolutely love that. And now we can have a conversation about culture and art, because a great deal of the artwork that came from China have a strong use of negative space, simple lines. And projects like those, I do about 5 or 6 of those global kinds of things every year. It's great, number one, as a gateway. I don't want to use the word drug, but it's a gateway excitement to trying something else. And it gave a chance for my teachers to not feel so intimidated by using Skype, because they had a purpose to make that happen. So I am a big fan of these sorts of things.
Yes, very good, very good. And yeah, and those I think are perfect examples of that. That it doesn't just, if you're going to get your class connected to another class, it doesn't just have to be one of these mystery Skype things. And the Squiggles of Awesome and the Gingerbread Challenge, and I mean, all of these things were all basically just conceived because students and teachers dreamed up some sort of crazy activity they could do together. Something which I love the way that you put this, Dyane, that was brilliantly simple.
Yes.
They came up with something that was brilliantly simple and they just did it. So that's not to say that if somebody's watching this video right now that they can't cook up their own type of activity that's something totally different and it could be a huge hit.
That's where the magic comes in. Don't be afraid to dream big. That's the way I look at it. If you have an idea that students are curious about, they may want to know of what's the weather like on the shortest day of the school year. Or how do you prepare for inclement weather where you are? Do you have, and not even weather, but maybe you do earthquake drills. Throw the question out there, create a graphic, throw it out on Twitter, and friends will respond. Yep. Don't be afraid to give it a shot.
Yeah, definitely. All right, very good. Well, we're gonna keep moving. In the sake of time, we talked about mystery Skype and some ways that classes can get connected. And as far as virtual field trips go, I know that there's lots of options out there. And if you go through the Skype in the Classroom website, like Dyane was saying earlier, everything is free. There's some really, really neat options. And so, Jed, I was wondering if you could tell us briefly about one that your students have gotten to do. And then Gina, maybe you could follow up with one yourself.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the Sea Turtle Hospital, which was amazing. But just kind of following suit with what Dyane said about simplicity. One of the most, the greatest learning experience that I think I've experienced with a Sky virtual field trip. Yeah, I've been to South Africa to see penguins. I've been to the Arctic to explore. But one of the best experiences I had was we visited a bee farm in Maryland. And the lady, and forgive me for not remembering her name, this has been a while ago, but the lady who was the beekeeper put on her suit. She showed us the honeycombs. She talked about the role of the male bee, the female bee. She talked about how important the bees were to the environment. She talked about what honey really is, which is bee throw up. I hate to gross anybody out, but that's
what? You're kidding me.
And so this experience, this is very telling of what a virtual field. It was supposed to be a 30-minute experience. The kids were so engaged, so full of questions. The experience lasted an hour. The classroom that I was in at the time, they used their desks to take notes with dry erase markers. Their desks were covered in notes, and it was just fantastic. And then just to kind of bring the Skype world and the real world, if you will, together in the classroom, I brought some honey from a local beekeeper. So everybody got to taste some honey as we were learning that it was called bee throw up, which was fantastic. But it just, it wasn't this, I mean, there's some pretty amazing field trip experiences, a sloth sanctuary in Costa Rica, the retired elephants from Ringling Brothers, a cheetah conservatory, a penguin, and those are all amazing. But this was something very simple that a beekeeper in Maryland said, hey, I want to share this with students. And it was incredible experience. And what I loved about it, the teacher I was working with actually just took that lesson and made it another experience where she found a local beekeeper who actually came in to extend the lesson beyond just that one call. So that kept the learning going well after the virtual field trip was over. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's awesome. And then Gina, you've had a couple of neat virtual field trip experiences too. Can you tell us real briefly about that?
This year we were studying volcanoes and earth formations as part of our new science standards, and we were discussing the geosphere. And Skype in the Classroom had a lesson with Mount Rainier National Park. And so we met with the park ranger there, and she talked to us all about the volcano there and how their volcano was built and the type of volcano it was. And my kids took a bunch of notes in their science notebook. We did a little pre-session for things they knew about volcanoes. They wrote a little information from what she was talking about. And she had this really cool activity that she did with them where she talked about the things that were happening with the volcano and played this game with them and talked about whether or not it would be time to evacuate because the volcano was getting ready to erupt, or whether they should not evacuate yet. And my kids she was fabulous. She was so engaging, and she was so into the questions the kids were asking. And it was an amazing, amazing session. And then a few days later, there was another opportunity that came to me from an association called Learn Around the World that does free virtual field trips as well. And Brandon, in charge of Learn Around the World, was taking the kids on a virtual field trip to volcanoes in Guatemala. And so using his GeoPro, he had walked us through these volcanoes in Guatemala and talked to the kids about how the earth was so warm still because the volcano in Guatemala had erupted like 6 years ago, and how the earth was so warm that if you dug a hole, you could roast marshmallows in the dirt in the land coming off of the volcano. And it was absolutely amazing. And then we got to do a compare and contrast with the non-active volcano on Mount Rainier, since it hasn't exploded for years, and the ones in Guatemala that had exploded 6 or 8 years ago. And we did a nice compare contrast between the volcanoes in the United States, volcanoes in Guatemala. We talked a lot about the Ring of Fire. It was amazing the connections that kids could make between the volcanoes in the Ring of Fire, the volcanoes in the US. I remember the kids saying, well, how many volcanoes are there that are still active in the world? And the questions that spun off that they wanted to investigate themselves made for a really nice student-driven project at the end of our unit in order to talk about our standards and in order to explain our learning. And it was a fabulous experience.
Yeah.
So the more you can form those connections and the more that you've got resources like the ones that we're suggesting to go out and hunt for, the more it's going to benefit your students in the long run.
Yes, 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 totally agree. Now, one thing that we haven't touched on very much that, Dyane, I was hoping you might be able to touch on real briefly here is the idea of guest speakers. We've talked about getting classes connected to other classes, and that's a really great fit for some classrooms and for some teachers and students. And we've talked about the virtual field trips, which are, you know, a perfect experience to fit with certain curricular things. But having the guest speaker there to, you know, provide perspective and experience and to answer questions and everything, that can really work. And so I was hoping you could give us some examples of some of the guest speakers that you've seen that have really been great.
Absolutely, and I'll go quickly. I know you're short on time, but one of them is the Penguin Publishers, as in books for children and adults. They have a partnership with Skype in the Classroom. So if you do a Google search for Penguin Author Visits Skype, it'll take you directly to the page. And there are usually between 12 and 20 different authors who will Skype to classrooms for free. And you know, if you bring in a children's author into a school, it usually starts in the 3 digits and moves to the 4 digits. This is in the free digits, which is something I can do. There are several of those. Another one, do you guys remember the Drew Carey Show?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you remember Mimi?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, now she takes on the character of Mrs. P. And Mrs. P's story time, you can find her on Twitter. She has her own website as well. She has been a partner with Skype in the Classroom. Certain times of the year, she dials into kindergarten through 4th grade classrooms and does a completely interactive thing on having imagination. And it's fantastic with these little bitty guys on the call. And, you know, being a woman who's an actress as well, she knows her stuff. It's a highly exciting one. If you just look on this website, at the Skype in the Classroom website, click on guest speakers, you'll see several of these. But I would challenge you to think that there is someone who is passionate about something that you need. Whether you are discussing ultraviolet lights and you want to talk to somebody who builds sunglasses for a living, or you are talking about this time in the fall and you want to talk to somebody who does pumpkin chunkin', there is somebody who does something that you're excited about. And it's not hard to find them anymore. Reach out and see if they'll talk to your kids. It's magic.
It is.
10 extra.
I got a pumpkin too, Dyane. Even though I got it's a napkin, but I could ball it up and chunk it over there.
And there's somebody who's passionate about napkins, Jed. We can find somebody there.
I love
Yes.
it. That was great.
Yes, indeed. 10 extra credit points to Dyane Smokorowski for having props ready to go at her reach. I don't know if you set it up ahead of time. Okay, Jed gets 5 extra credits for his pumpkins. There you go.
Pumpkins have left this house. Can't you tell?
Oh, yeah. Here, let's look at that one more time. Here, show us your Christmas sparkle one more time.
There's the pumpkin scenery has no longer made its way to my home. Christmas has arrived here.
It has ceased to exist. Yes. All right. Well, I got one more question that I know that we need to cover, and I'm going to throw this one to Jed to kind of wrap us up for today. If anybody's wanting to do this and they've heard all of these cool experiences that they can do, and they've heard of the places where they can find people, but they're still going, you know, I'm just not exactly sure where to get started. Do you have any suggestions for people who just want to get started? Any tips for our beginners?
Well, I will tell you just about my own journey. How I got started is I met people who were farther along the path, farther along on the journey than I was, and I just said, "Hey, can I tag along and watch what you guys do and learn from you?" And I just want to offer that to the people who watch your Ditch University or Ditch, what is it called? Ditch Summit.
Ditch Summit, yes.
Ditch
Digital Summit.
Digital Summit, sorry. But I would love for somebody to send me a tweet, send me an email and say, hey, help me with this. I would love to get started. I will tell you, when I first got started, I was very intimidated because I saw all these really huge projects that were amazing. And I was like, I just don't know if I can do that right out of the gate. And that held me back at first. But once I got over that fear and just said, hey, I just want to, I got a piano in my room and I want to turn on the Skype camera and I want to play my piano and teach you a song. Can we do that? And you know what? People started saying, yeah, let's do that. And next thing you know, I was playing the hokey pokey on 3 continents at the same time. So that was pretty cool. It wasn't an idea that I said, ooh, let's go have this big global project. It really took me moving past my fears and worries and insecurities about it and saying, I'm going to try this. And like Gina said, if it failed miserably, I'm going to try it again. That's the biggest thing that I hope the teachers watching this segment take away, is that all of us started with something small, and we just, like a snowball rolling down a hill, it just gets bigger and more awesome with every roll. So encourage them. They got to start somewhere. Find all of us. There's a group of Skype Master Teachers, not just these 3, but there's about 80 of us worldwide that we would love to be your first Skype call and help you get started on this fantastical journey. And I always say this, I got to say it here, a bad Skype call is better than a good worksheet any day. So get out there and have some bad calls and some good calls and make some great experiences for your kids.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you squeezed that in. That was the perfect way to end this, I think. So, all right. Very good. Well, I'm so glad that you 3 all got to join us. I think we had lots of practical stuff. We had some inspirational stuff. We've got some contacts. If anybody wants to get in touch with these guys, if you're on our digital summit site at ditchsummit.com, you can click on their speaker page and their contact information is right there, or you can go search for them on Twitter or wherever. So you guys have been the best. I'm going to click through your pictures one more time so you can wave goodbye to the people. Dyane, you're first. Say goodbye. And then Gina.
Guys.
And Jed.
Bye, y'all.
All right. You guys are the best. And thank you so much for joining us for the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit. We'll see you later.
Thank you, Matt.